Disclaimer, trigger warning. The We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather is a platform for survivors to share their truth. Welcome to the We Are One podcast. Let's jump right into today's episode. Here's your hosts, Olivia and Jennifer.
Welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia.
And I'm your co-host, Jen.
And on today's episode, we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary of starting the podcast. And I want to start off by saying thank you so much for, 1 year of support and love, even from the haters. It has motivated us even more. And I think it just continued to show our mission, throughout the year. I'm always hesitant to tell people go listen, because in the beginning I was just starting out. I listened back to my episode. I'm like, I could have probably spared from some details that were shared and probably added more, but it's also maybe who I am. So I don't really hide it. But I'm like, could have added a little bit more, I guess, juicy, but I didn't also know. So just starting off and being able to have, I think it was 24 or 25 people on season 1. So I think there was 26 episodes, but I think it was,
and then you were in one. So yeah.
So and I'm extremely thankful that I was able to do it, by myself for one season. But I would say midway I got overwhelmed. It was a lot of messaging people messaging me back, seeing my posts, stuff like that, and just also trying to get out there as someone who I had no idea how to podcast at all. And so I taught myself. I looked up on YouTube some things or whatever, and I was just like, you know what, we're gonna wish for the best. And I can't thank you guys enough. And then I met you on season 1. I had Jen come on for the motherhood series, and again, you were the first person to ever make me cry.
And I'm so glad you took that out, but that's fine. It's your story.
Yeah. I just wasn't ready for the world to hear that part. And so, but she made me cry. Ugly girl cry. Well, it
was totally unexpected because it was towards the end.
It's just oh yeah. But obviously we just have this connection
moment. We did.
And so when I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I need to have been trying. And at that time I was like, maybe I'm an assistant just to help with the content and organizing the messages and stuff like that, which is what you do for being my co-host too. But I was like, I think it'd be nice to have another voice on. And so I was like, okay, God, just tell me, send me, show me who. And every time I'm like, okay, I really got to make a decision. I got to post. I'm looking for, whatever. It was no, ask Jen B. And so I called her up on a random Tuesday, and I was like, hey, and she didn't even hesitate, guys. She was like, yep. And I was like, no, Jen, you can sit and pray and think about it. You're like, no. Yeah.
No, because I had already been manifesting.
Which I didn't know this. I did not know this. So share this.
So I had put a post on Facebook 2 years ago, a year and a half, something like that, and kind of just starting to tell a little bit of my story on Facebook. And a lot of my Facebook followers, they're, friends of mine from the IFB, people that knew me from the past. They know my ex. They went to my dad's former church, or they went to college with me at either Bob Jones University or West Coast Baptist College. And so a lot of them know a little bit about my story, maybe not the whole thing. And I got to the point where I was ready to tell my story, but I wasn't sure how to do it. So I was kind of giving little tidbits, and I wouldn't name his name or anything like that. But the people who knew me, they know who he is. So it was unnecessary for me to drop the name or anything. And at the time I thought, you know what, I'm going to set up a voice or an email for other survivors who maybe want to come forward and tell their story to me, and then we can sort of just support each other. I never thought about doing a podcast until a little bit later on. A friend of mine from Bob Jones University, she was in radio for a while, and so she's an amazing person. We talked about doing a podcast, but never about this. We just wanted to talk about like funny, ridiculous stories and, just be goofy. And it was never like about, helping survivors in the IFB or anything. We just wanted it to be sort of like carefree and relatable. And that never happened. So, but the whole podcast thing was sort of in my mind. And I'm like, maybe a podcast would be kind of cool to do with somebody. And so that was like 2 years ago. And I actually got an email from somebody about her story, how she was sexually assaulted in the IFB and nothing ever happened. Nothing came from it when she was 15. And so when I messaged her back on my email, she never responded. So I thought, well, maybe she just needed to tell her story, which is fine. But I thought, well, if something comes out of this someday, then, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to tell my story. I'm ready to help other people tell their story. And then when Olivia asked me to come on season 1 and tell my story, it was kind of a crap show because I live in a very rural area that does not have good internet connection. And so here I am, yapping on about my story. And then when she aired it, it was like several times it was like glitching and I had no idea, but it is what it is. I was like, whatever.
And I couldn't take it out because if I did, then it wouldn't make sense. And so I just put a warning, like there's some audio issues, but like please like stay along with it. It gets better as time. It was only twice that happened.
Yeah.
But it was like I couldn't take out. It was like those important.
Yeah. But I was like, of course it's me. Of course it happened to me. Of course it's in the middle of my story that it's gonna happen. And my ex is probably like, see, God doesn't want her to do this or whatever, stupid thing that they say. But so told my story. And then when she called me a couple months later, I was like, yes, absolutely. Like there was no hesitation because
none, literally none. She's like, yes. I was like, do you want to think about it? I'm like, no, I just give you a week. And you're like, no, let's go.
Let's do it. I was ready.
You were like, so what are we doing? I'm like, I'm working.
When are we starting? When are we doing this? Give me all the details. Yeah, I was excited. And so I just felt like, it all kind of led to that moment. Mm-hmm. And then it's been an incredible journey the last few months. Like I've only been doing this since August.
Yeah, it's about 6-ish months.
And the people that we've talked to, the survivors that we've talked to, it's been like seriously incredible. And all the things that are coming up for this year and then next season as well. It's kind of
we'll get into it. So for the first year though of the podcast, I remember like to know like a year ago, like the emotions I was feeling. I was in South Carolina when I, first originally announced on New Year's, like, hey, new year, new like thing I'm going to do. And it got a lot of people stirred with a lot of emotions. And I understand definitely people who know me personally, right? They're like, what's going on, right?
Oh yeah,
because
people don't get it.
It's going to change your whole life, right? And so I understand the hatred towards it because you don't ever want to look at these people that you once trusted with everything in you, whether you looked at him as a god, whether you looked at him as this godly person, whatever. You don't want to think that these people would do such things, but truth hurts, reality hits, and the more people sweep it under the rug is the issue. Yeah. And so I know in my heart, starting the podcast is my calling, right? Like one of my callings in life. And I am not going to stop no matter what. We're not going to stop. Yeah. And I know with this upcoming year, we kind of shared a little bit about on our lives. If you go on our Instagram, you can like rewatch the lives if you want. They're pretty funny. Yes, they're pretty funny. But if not, we, after this episode airs the following week, we kind of for like the whole month of January for the remainder weeks, will be basically teen pregnancy and also children pregnancy. Yes, children, within the IFB and how that happened, navigated it, what should have happened, what did happen, all of that. We talked to a couple survivors that had to deal with that. And I will say next week's episode, you will see the emotions I didn't even know how to process. And I know like you didn't talk about it for 2 days after recording. I told her immediately after recording, I don't want to talk about podcast stuff. I needed to decompress. And there was times where I got I got so emotional. You had to pick up what I was saying. Like you just like ran with it, which I'm so thankful that you like were picking up on our cues. Like, okay, like,
right,
you know, type of thing, because I was speechless. Like I like legit had like, I felt like I had air in my lungs. I was like, I cannot grasp a child pregnant. And like the survivor that we have on next week, Joel's, she needs to write a book first off, but two, I just want people to hear it, understand it, come with an open mind, and know that these things happen. And it's unfortunate it happens in church, right? Because that should be your sanctuary.
That should be
your safe space.
Yeah.
And then people wonder why people stray away. It's like, well, these things happen. And so we talk about that for January. February is an exciting month, though. We're doing a pastors month. And so we got in contact with, which they reached out to us, which I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Because it was a pattern. We're seeing, I go, let's just make it a series. And Jim was like, let's do it.
I love it. It's good.
And we talk with former IFB pastors that now have left the IFB and more non-denomination, you know, approach as pastors. And those were they were really like, I enjoyed
very
it.
insightful.
Very insightful. Yeah. So, and I know it's probably going to stir a lot of IFB pastors, because it's going to make them realize that we're calling you out. You know, the hypocrisy's done. We're done with the BS, you know, whatever. You can hide for as long, but social media is booming. And with podcasts like mine or ours, with ours and other, you know, things, it's time. And that's biblical. Things that, you know, happen in the dark will come to light. And so 2025, it's our year. In March, we are just doing a TTI, which is the Troubled Teen Industry Serious Month. And we are talking about the troubled teen industry within the IFB. We understand that with the troubled teen industry, it's a huge global thing, but we are strictly talking with the IFB homes because they all tie back to our original series, Lester Roloff.
Yes.
And, you know, like Jen and I, we're talking day in and day out with people, and we're like, this just proves once again, everybody's tied to everyone. Everybody's tied to the fathering, like, you know, the founder fathers, like
founding fathers of the IFB.
And Roloff, and Roloff was huge for the troubled teen industry. And so if you have not watched it, or if you want to go back and rewatch it so then you can understand a little bit more on who he is or like whatever before March, we highly recommend doing that, and share it with people, because I will say this, all survivors want is just to be heard and seen and understood. And so we are thankful that they want to come on. You know, I love hearing that they feel so safe. Like I love that. Like we were just on a live and they were saying like, we know that it's safe, and we love that. We love that we have created such a safe community and like a platform for people to come on and share their story. So thank you guys for, you know, trusting us, because we genuinely are doing this so then we can bring awareness. We don't have
in change.
We don't have an end game. We're not performative. We've kind of told that a few times.
I don't know that there is an end game, because it's ongoing.
It's going to be an ongoing thing.
You know,
it's going to be an ultimate changing, you know, and we're creating an army in a way. And so, not to sound like Jack Iles, but
after we heard that today, I was like, maybe we should think something different.
Yeah, maybe something else. But we have so much exciting things for season 2, season 3. So I will say season 2 will end in May, like we did last year. And then season 3 will be picked up in July. We are not going to share the date yet, just because we're still finalizing some things that we have a really cool opportunity to do within our little breaky break. That we can't wait to share more, but we are not talking about it right now. You guys will just have to ponder. But so Jen, what are some things I will say that you probably because you listened to me on season 1 or whatever, and now you're as like the co-host or whatever, what are some things that you finally realized you're like, oh crap, Olivia's not lying, like, or joking or whatever?
Oh gosh.
What are some things?
That's a really hard question.
What are some things that stood out to you that you really want listeners to understand? Like,
as far as like people that you talk to, or
like just anything that you like you're like,
okay,
man, like.
So since I've been doing this, I think the biggest thing that I think people need to realize is that a lot of these men of God that you guys think are, you know, godly or whatever, they're not. And yeah, we're all flawed and we're all humans and stuff like that. But the idolization that happens within the IFB is straight up ungodly. You know, we're doing a month on Hiles in April. And the idolization with him, the idolization of Lester Roloff and Ruckman and some of these others, is just, it's not even biblical. Like, so I think that when you step back and you just take a look at even just that alone, you're in a cult. Like, you're literally in a cult. And a lot of these things are, you know, that you're taught in the IFB about, you know, women shouldn't wear pants, and you're not allowed to drink wine, and you're not allowed to, you know, associate with people outside of the church. None of that's biblical. None of it. That's all made up, and that's all manipulation that's been done by the former pastors or the founders or these institutions that like to indoctrinate kids in the IFB, some of these colleges, that they're just trying to create a narrative of control and fear. And I think that for me, I can't speak for everybody, but I know other survivors have said this too. For me, when I left the IFB, it gave me a chance to kind of get rid of the residue, as I call it, and kind of peel back all of those layers and actually then see truly like who God was and experience a more organic relationship with him, instead of being told this is how you should worship, this is how you should dress, this is how you should believe this verse, you know, what this verse says. And when you actually step away from that, you can see from the outside at that point, like, holy crap, this was actually a cult, like legitimately. And I know that we've said it before, like not all IFB churches are bad, not all IFB pastors are bad. However, we have come to a point where there needs to be a line drawn in the sand.
Yeah.
There's been decades and decades of scandal upon scandal upon scandal. There's been lawsuits. There's been, you know, jail time, prison time. There's been all kinds of stuff. Like, what more do you need as far as evidence to tell you that maybe you should just re-examine where you're going, what you're believing, who you're following? And if you're a pastor that's in the IFB right now, I know some of my dad's preacher boys that came out. I love you guys, but think about where the IFB is now and what all, like, the history of it and where it's come from and where it is now, to the point where, you know, it wasn't just Hiles. It wasn't just Lester Roloff. There's continuous scandals and there's continuous things coming out about, you know, children being abused and women being abused and boys being abused. That's so much stuff. Like, why would you want to associate with that? Like, take your church, continue with the fundamentals of the faith and the doctrines that you believe, and throw the rest of it in the trash. Maybe become a Bible church. I don't know, but I would definitely disassociate myself from the IFB at this point and draw the line in the sand, because if you don't, then that means that you're in agreement with what is going on. And I think that's like an important point. And even for somebody that's listening that's not like a pastor or pastor's wife or youth pastor,
if you're just whatever. A member,
if you're just a member, you can even do this in your own head. Like, okay, let's do some like research and history and comparison. Go on our podcast, listen to previous episodes that we've done of Lester Roloff. You know, there's other podcasts out there that have also, you know, highlighted a lot of these guys. Do your research and then decide. But I think a lot of the the thing that surprised me was how vast the corruption is and was and continues to be. It didn't end with Heil. It didn't end with Lester Roloff. It's continuing to current day. And they're creating a new generation of young preachers in these Bible colleges who will continue on this legacy of corruption and abuse and hypocrisy. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize also, like being a host and co-host, we know a lot more than what we're saying now. And so we get very fired up, we get amped up because we know a lot of stuff. And that was something I had to grasp. Like like when someone would come at me, I'm like, okay, no. They don't know. Yeah. They don't know what I know. So don't approach it this way, because at the end of the day, listen to the podcast. So I've always said, like, ask yourself this when people come at me, definitely from my former church, ask yourself this: why am I getting offended? Why am I getting offended? Why am I getting mad at Olivia? Right. And I've said this to a couple people, and I actually heard one say, I was livid at your podcast. And I was like, okay, like, why mad, girl? And she said, and then I had to sit back and ask, why am I mad? Why am I getting mad? Because truth hurts. And she's like, and that was a rude awakening. And now she had left my former church, whatever. And she's on like the self journey, right? But I'm like, ask yourself, why are you getting offended? Why? People who get offended, they only get offended because the truth hurts. You know what I mean? Because if I was lying, or if you were lying, or if other people were lying about these big time people in the IFB, then you would be like, whatever, right? You're only getting mad because truth hurts. Anything that we have out, there's facts backing it up. We're not going to put our reputation, our name on the line with lies. What do we have to gain? We don't have nothing to gain, right? We're just helping survivors share their experience, share their voice, so they can feel seen and loved and heard, because for years they did not. And so that is our mission. And I think some people get confused about what is our mission. So I want to restate what our mission is. And something also that I had to realize is there's a difference between people who truly do not know, right? They don't know. They're like, what? I've never heard of Roloff. I've never heard of the Rebecca Home. I've never heard of Anchor or Bethel. Oh, I've never even heard of Jack Patterson. I've never heard of Hiles. You know what I mean? Like some people just truly don't know. They just think that because they're going to a church, right? They don't realize that they are so affiliated with everything, because the word independent is in the name. Right. But it's like everybody's tied to everything, right? So my thing is this: I have sympathy, I have compassion, I have understanding for members who listen to the podcast and are like, whoa, what do you mean? You know what I mean? And they're like on their own journey. But I don't have compassion, and I will not stand for anyone who contacts me or contacts the podcast saying, I know these things happen, but, and then they still, whatever. I don't have compassion. Yeah,
there's no excuse.
There's no excuse. There's no common ground. There's no middle ground to abuse. You're either for it or you're against it. And so my thing is, for IFB pastors, for example, Wilkerson, how are you going to be able to say, like, how are you going to have Jack Trieber and all these people in these conferences, right? And then say, like, we're trying to, do better, whatever. And then you have these people who are in scandals and all this stuff, right?
Or trying to cover up,
whatever. Or go on podcasts with people who have an active murder, people who are tying their names to Dave Hiles. What are you doing? He is an active murder investigation in the state of Indiana, and you're tying your name to it. You need to reevaluate why. And my thing is this too: pastors who do not come out against abuse, you should ask yourself, why is my pastor not coming out and bringing awareness about this? Why? Because more than likely they agree with it and they're doing it be awesome. There's some scandals going on, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I will say this, with my former church, I don't know how anyone can sit in that pew and acknowledge, because I always hear, Olivia's right. I've gotten calls from former members that have known me my whole life, which I wish I could record, but I'm not going to either. They're like, you're right. I hate it. I wish that he would just stand up there and, publicly make an announcement. You know what I mean? I hate that this has caused these hurt feelings. You're right. But then they go on a Sunday morning and they still are tithing to the place. It's like, there's no common ground. You're either for it or you're not. So, and there's been a few people in my life that have left in 2024. There's no reconciliation, nothing. It's 25. I'm good. You know what I mean? Because you can't call up a survivor and say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I cried listening to your episode. My heart's broken. And then still go there and give your life to the church, because that's what you do. So that's something.
Accountability.
Yeah. And the whole mindset that these pastors are humans. Yeah, they're humans. There's mistakes, sure. But
they're held to
they took an oath.
Correct.
So you cannot look at, if you start putting your pastor in the same view as a member, you are biblically incorrect. The pastors, that is biblically, you are held to a different standard because you're taking an oath. And so if you're not going to hold your pastor accountable, then you are letting abuse just run rapid. That's and that's something I had to realize too. And yes, there might be a few IFB churches that truly are against it or whatever. And I say, I mean, I know one personally, and I'm like, oh, stop saying you're IFB. Like, get out of that, right? So it just goes back to what you were saying also. You got to realize who you're associating yourself with.
Right.
And so I always say, IFBers who get mad at us in the comments, like, why are you getting mad? We're just like, that truth hurts. You know what I mean? I will say this though. Okay, hold on. I have to. I just.
Olivia almost choked on her gum.
Oh, it was all like melty.
Oh, that was probably God. That was probably God doing that too, because you were talking.
Okay, so back to our episode. So I will say this also. If you do have a story, we don't like to compare trauma. There's no comparison with trauma. So if you think that, oh my gosh, this didn't happen, I didn't get sexually assaulted, so this isn't for me. This podcast platform is for you. There's all different forms of abuse. And we want to bring light to all of it because it's very important. Definitely, you know, the spiritual abuse, spiritual abuse, I feel like is one of the worst ones because
pretty much everyone in the IFB has probably experienced some level of spiritual abuse, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. And so if you do have a story, we would love to hear from you, honestly. And if you want to keep your identity hidden, we're totally cool with that. We actually had quite a few people that didn't want to show their face, right? But they wanted to share their experience. Yeah. And we're all for it. So if that's keeping you from doing it, please know that we will work with you. We will help you. Also, if you are wanting to get out, and which sounds so funny, you're wanting to get out, like,
well, I mean, but when you're in a cult
and you feel like
kind of need to,
but you feel like I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose family. I'm going to lose friendships, friends. And my job. Some people work at like schools that are connected with the church, and they're like, I can't. That's really my good point. You know, that's my income, or whatever. I'm stuck, right? I promise you, we will try and help as much as possible with resources and stuff like that. And it's very scary. I'm not going to tell you it's not. You're going to lose everything. I
mean, I was a youth pastor's wife and a preacher's daughter at the time I left. And, you know, I don't really look at myself as like anything, you know, extraordinary. I'm just a basic girl that decided enough was enough. And if I can do it, I feel like anyone can do it. And we want to help you.
So if you email us at the email too, and you know, we're not saying it has to be like a rapid decision. It could be, you know, whatever, to help you feel safe that you can get out and know that you are loved. You should be appreciated. You should not have to live your life in fear. And that grass
misery.
And the grass is greener on the other side. It's going to take a while. We're not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah. It's gonna take a while,
we're not going to be like the IFBers who act like salvation is like an MLM pyramid scheme. You do all these things. We're not going to do that because it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy, but we are here to help you.
And we have a support system.
We have such a huge support system behind the scenes also that will help give resources, whether you're 18 and you're wanting to get out because your household is abusive, your father's abusing you, your brother or your mom, you know what I mean? Like whatever. Or if you're a college student who wants to leave the college, but it's like, my parents are paying my tuition, but I don't want to go here, whatever. Like, we're trying to help you. If you're in an abusive marriage, I know for a fact, Jen and I will look up so many resources, no matter where you're at in the world, states or whatever, with resources, shelters, any way we can help, we want to. And so I wanted to make sure that was said too, because I feel like so many people have reached out, or they'll say like, I listened to so-and-so story and that just didn't happen to me or whatever, but this happened to me. And I'm like, no, like that's, you're worthy. Your experience is worthy. And so
for sure.
we don't trauma compare at all. Because at the end of the day, we want our platform just to be an open discussion for anyone and everyone.
Speaking of the platform, let's talk about the insights for a second. Can we do this? Can we do this? This would be fun here.
It's on the charger. So we want to let you guys know.
Also, while she's looking that up, the email that she's referring to is ifbsurvivorsofabuse@gmail.com. So if you want to email us a brief description of your story, or if you have any questions for us, feel free to email us there, or reach out on any of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Of course, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as far as to listen and or watch our mugs on YouTube. You're welcome to do that. And so
for a lot of people don't know this, but like once you become a podcaster, you can see insights. It's a little bit different on each app and stuff like that. So like for Instagram, for example, it might say that we only have 280 followers, but we have 5.6 thousand views. Like, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people will not
on one post.
Yeah. One post only. But a lot of people will not follow us because they don't want to be caught listening to our stuff, whether they supporting in the way. Yeah. I've had a couple of people from my former church will like a post, and I'll get the notification, and then when I go back on, they unlike it, and it's a constant pattern. I'm like, you're sending me a message.
Okay.
You're sending me a message.
We hear you.
It's either two ways. One, I see you, I hear you, and I don't like you. Or two, I see you and I see you, I support you, but I have to unlike it. But I want you to know I'm watching.
Oh, you're saying that's what those people are saying. Oh, not that we like you guys. It's fine.
No, I'm saying people who do that, like they're liking, unliking, whatever. Yeah. That is my opinion on what their message is sending, right?
Yeah.
So
or they're just haters creeping on us.
Go right ahead.
Which is fine too.
For Spotify,
I'm curious. I don't know what's going on with this light. Just saw this light. Okay.
So for Spotify, within the only 30 days, so every 30 days they do like an impressions, Spotify search, all of that. And if you're a podcast creator, you'll know what we're meaning. But within the past 30 days, we had over 21,190. And I want to talk about that. So that means this is the number of times your show or any of your episodes were shown to anyone on Spotify over the last 30 days and was streamed.
Just on Spotify.
Spotify only.
We're also on Apple Podcasts.
We're on Apple. And I want to say this, Apple people, why is there an app? We don't know our Apple data. We don't know any of it. They don't have, or unless unless I am just like wrong on it. I even looked on like Apple, like all of it. I can't see any of it. So if you're a podcaster out there and like, oh no, download this app, I just can't see the insights on Apple. I know how many people will listen to on Apple versus Spotify, which I will share that.
And same with YouTube.
Apple Podcasts, 48.2% of our listeners listen on Apple. 45.8 is Spotify. And then it says web browser, which I heard that's like Google or something. I don't know. It's just like 3.9. And then we actually have quite a few countries, which I'm assuming are missionaries.
Or maybe just listeners. I mean, who knows? People that listen to podcasts.
Yeah. The United States is like our number one, obviously. Then we have Canada, United Kingdom, Japan, Germany. Like it's crazy.
Do you have any crazy ones on there? Do they show like Zimbabwe or something?
Argentina, the Netherlands.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So if you're watching
El Salvador, Mexico.
If you're watching this and you are from one of those regions, hey, we appreciate your support.
And you know what, this is something that stood out the most to me was our Spotify only for age 35 to 44 is like our biggest one, which is 31.9% listeners.
Wait, 35 to 44?
Yep. 45 to 59 is 27.6% of our followers. So there is like, I will say from season 1 to now, a lot of the older generation is now listening, which I love. I love it.
Well, are you calling me the older generation?
Yeah, because it used to be 20. Used to be 28 to 34 season 1.
So that
season 1, 28 to 34 was like my booming audience. I was like,
so with these 24 and I'm 45.
So there's a healthy balance.
So there is, it's a nice,
Yeah. And I will say female is 70%, but males, 24.1.
Wow.
Like, we love it. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
And then it just says non-binary is 5.7, which, okay. So yeah, I mean, we have quite
after our LGBT month, maybe it'll be a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, yeah.
We'll see. It's coming out in what month?
Well, we're filming it in July, but I don't know when it'll be out for season 3. We'll have to stay tuned for that.
I thought it was this season.
No, girl, we have been over this on live. Okay. Season 2 ends in May.
Yes, I know.
We're recording with people in June. Maybe we'll have it out in
maybe
July.
that's what it was.
Maybe we'll have it out in July.
Okay.
Anyway, back to our episode. We're just yapping. Yeah, so I mean, to kind of sum this episode up, we just are so thankful for the support and love. And again,
for sure.
If you have a story, totally reach out to us, email us,
or a question.
Also, we would love to do more Q&As and stuff like that. So
more lives. We're gonna
so definitely. Please interact. Please follow our platforms and stuff like that. Share it with people that you think would enjoy our podcast, or might have a story that you think that needs to be aired or whatever. We would love to get in contact with you. Mm-hmm. But so thank you so much for supporting, and I would say loving our podcast for a year now, and I can't wait to do year 2 and year 3, and who knows.
Exciting stuff coming, and buckle up, guys.
That should be a part of it. Buckle up, guys. Like you're on a roller coaster, like you were. This is our life, guys. This is our life. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. And okay, stay tuned. I'm gonna have a trailer for next week's episode with our guest Jules. And I want to say this again. Come listen with an open heart, open mind. If you do not end up crying, I don't know how not. Like, you got to get more attuned with your emotions, because I could not stop crying. And I'm not a crier.
I cried after. I was like trying to hold it together for both
I
of us.
I couldn't. And I'm not a crier. People who know me personally, I don't cry like that. But
that's what you guys don't understand. A lot of times we have these side conversations before we start recording with them that sometimes are even better than the recording. Like either before we start recording,
they don't want to share.
Or after the recording. And because it is nerve-wracking for people who have never been on a podcast before to, once you hit the record button and it says now recording, you kind of tense up a little bit as a guest. You're like, oh, am I going to like screw up? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to forget what I really wanted to say or what I wanted to come across? But we have some very like really good, like in-depth conversations with people off air a lot of times. And I mean, there's been times where I cried before we even started recording. I had to step away. And then there's times that, and then there's times that she would cry, and it's hard because you're listening to these stories and you're just like, it really does affect you. And I don't know, I'm sure some of you guys can relate to this. Like when you're listening to these episodes that we're bringing out with these survivors, like it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, because and I keep saying this, but it's so true. But it's like, if you allow yourself to go there and like
open your heart, open your mind,
your paradigm's going to be shattered.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to go through as well. That's just something that, is really difficult to digest and work.
It's hard. I mean, we're hosts, and, and we still are like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Another
It's
church,
sad.
another pastor.
And
It's sad.
this is not like a witch hunt. This is not like a
Trust me, if we
a
wanted that or
vengeance.
revenge, most people would be
This
in
is
jail.
not a vengeance podcast. This is not a witch hunt. The thing is these people have done these things, and so
Mhm.
we're just bringing light to it. We're
Yep.
just we're shining the light on it, and it's getting exposed, and people are speaking out, and that's the beauty of the internet and social media and podcasting is
Mhm.
now this is giving people a platform and a voice to finally be heard, and we are here for it, and we want to stop the abuse, period. So we're
Yeah.
really excited about this season, next season,
Yeah.
ongoing season.
So continue listening and supporting us. And also I will drop this little spoiler. This isn't our only time traveling. So
Oh yeah.
stay tuned for that one, baby, because it's gonna be good. But yeah, keep on supporting and loving us, loving our podcast, and if you're a hater, keep on hating. I don't know, but stay tuned for next week's episode preview starting now.